I wonder what kind of adult my grandson John will be. Today, he enrolled a younger student at school, but John does not appear to be sorry. He acts on his emotions and is unable to control his anger. If this continues, John may do something truly irreversible. That night, in the quiet bedroom, only the air purifier could be heard. I gazed down at John. I could hear his soft breathing. I'm watching John sleep with a peaceful and innocent expression. My heart froze as I stared at the sharp blade of the knife I held in my right hand. I had a strong desire to relieve John's suffering. I clenched my teeth and gripped my wrist, holding the knife tightly in my other hand. Mixed emotions of love, hatred, and sadness overcame me, and I wasn't sure what to do. Trying desperately to control my trembling body and erratic breathing, I closed my eyes. I apologize. I cannot take it any longer. I raised the knife above John using both hands. This is the only way. I apologize. I apologize. My name is now Elena. I live with only my husband, Andrew. Since Andrew is about to retire, he always completes work on time. We enjoy leisurely dinners at home and weekend walks, leading a peaceful life. Both of us are healthy. Our mortgage has been paid off, and our children are now financially independent. I never doubted that my old age would be enjoyable and rewarding. My daughter Samantha works in fashion and frequently travels to Europe for work. Samantha decided not to marry at a young age. It's not because of bravado. Samantha truly deserves to be proud of her work. On the other hand, my son Nathan married at the age of 28 and has lived in the neighboring town ever since. Nathan and his wife Clara were childless for about 10 years. After their marriage, Clara seemed to be more troubled by this than Nathan. Nathan would say that you should rush to have children. I believe the time will come eventually. They would occasionally come to our house, and Nathan would bring up the topic of not having children, almost as if it were someone else's problem. He didn't have to mention it. But after 10 years without children, perhaps people were saying something. Andrew and I pretended we didn't care, as long as Nathan and Clara were content together. That was sufficient, Nathan would say. Clara is constantly reminding me not to drink or stay up late. She's like a nagging mother. Clara would smile shyly and look down. Clara's request for Nathan not to drink or stay up late appeared to be motivated by her own wishes. Even if Nathan hadn't realized it. 10 years is a long time. I remember when Nathan and Clara told us they were expecting a child. They used to come to see us once a month, but then they stopped, and I became concerned. They returned a few months later, and Nathan appeared embarrassed, which led me to suspect something was wrong. Nathan commented, "Well, Clara is pregnant." Finally, Clara's belly was still small, so she didn't appear to be pregnant, but seeing Clara gently caress her belly with a calm and kind smile moved me to tears. Clara asked, "Oh, what is wrong?" "Elena," I replied, "No. This is strange. I am not sad. I'm happy. I'm very happy." I told myself repeatedly that I was happy. I couldn't put it into words, but I was overjoyed that Clara was expecting a child. Clara's expression as she caressed her belly was the most joyful I'd ever seen her, and I knew I'd never forget it. The child was born with the name John. I thought the name John was perfect for my grandson, who had the most beautiful smile. Clara did not return to her parents' home because they lived so far away, but instead stayed with us for a while. The feel of a baby after such a long time was so soft that I was afraid to hold him. I held the fragile life and looked at John's face. "You've raised children before, so why are you scared to hold him?" "Well, it's different. He is someone else's child. I'm afraid I'll hurt him, even accidentally." I smiled wryly as I supported John with all of my strength. The tension was entirely different from what I had raised. Nathan and Samantha. John, asleep in my arms, was fragile, delicate, and beautiful. John grew up fast. At 4 years old, he loved picture books and devoured the ones he borrowed from the library. Nathan would always proudly share this with us. As long as he stays on the path he enjoys, he will eventually become a scholar. That is all that matters, as long as he is happy. Clara narrowed her eyes and studied young John's profile. I sincerely hope that this happiness lasts forever. One day, the phone rang at home. Andrew had retired, and lacking any particular interests, spent the majority of his days at home. When the phone rang, he picked it up right away. "Hello?" Andrew responded in a cautious tone, wary of scams and sales calls. "I was watching television. This is a typical moment in our daily lives." Andrew stared at me, holding the receiver to his ear, and even when our gazes met, he didn't look away. Andrew, quote, "S eyes seemed to reflect nothing." I knew something terrible had happened when I looked into those lifeless eyes. On that ordinary day, we received a call informing us that Clara and John had been involved in an accident and had been taken to the hospital. It happened on the way home from kindergarten. They could have been discussing what to have for dinner or drawing at home. I imagined Clara conversing with John as they walked hand in hand. They then approached a crosswalk, checked the green light, and began walking. It was all a product of my imagination, but it felt very real. A car driven by a drowsy driver, and the two of them are thrown into the air. Clara instinctively cradles John's head before they hit the ground. Andrew and I rushed to the hospital after receiving Nathan's call. We sat silently in the waiting room, and the image of Clara and John being hit by a car kept replaying in my head, so I covered my face several times. Why did this occur? Eventually, the doctor informed us that Clara had died. Nathan was speechless. Standing in the hallway, expression fixed. Only John survived, but the doctor's warnings about the possibility of a traumatic brain injury did not appear to reach him. When I held Andrew's hand, he, too, stared into the void, mouth half open, before the feeling of sadness could develop. Following Clara's funeral arrangements were made. Nathan asked us to care for John. I apologize. Just for a short while, I need some time alone to think. Following the loss of Clara, what about John's feelings as you think alone? Nathan was so downcast that I couldn't bring myself to ask the question. After being diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, John's previously gentle personality changed, and he began to exhibit violent behavior and outbursts. At first, I assumed that the sadness and loneliness of losing Clara had changed John's personality, but this may not be the case. John, who had suffered brain damage as a result of the injury, was experiencing symptoms of a traumatic brain injury that neither Andrew, Nathan, nor I understood. John would break and throw furniture while shouting, and he would occasionally be violent toward me. Nathan and Andrew would observe John from a distance, frowning, before fleeing the house. My worries persisted until John, exhausted by his rampages, fell asleep during those days. Only Samantha, who lived far away, called me every day to check on me. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I'm currently overseas, but I'll be sure to visit when I return." Hearing Samantha's voice would calm my heart a little. I had reached the age that society considered to be elderly. Spending the entire day with a young and violent grandson was mentally and physically exhausting. The stormy days with John continued, and he was about to start elementary school. Throughout kindergarten, John caused problems with his violence and abusive language, and I had to apologize several times. I questioned whether I had ever apologized so much in my life. Everyone initially expressed sympathy, but people gradually began to avoid John and me. Even Clara's friends, who had been close to her, began to avoid us, increasing our isolation. The kindergarten teachers made various accommodations, but John, who couldn't move as freely as the other kids, was always frustrated when I went to pick him up from school. I noticed John watching an active boy on the monkey bars. The boy with the handsome face easily completed the monkey bars and laughed with his friends, who clapped their hands. Grandma observed me. John attempted to grab the bars, but he appeared to hang there without much momentum. The boy who had completed the monkey bars began to imitate John. He gently gripped the bars and extended one leg, locking John. The other kids whispered and laughed as they watched. After losing interest in John, the boys switched to other playground equipment. Laughing and having fun, John punched me in the stomach as tears filled his eyes. Sometimes John's violence was directed at other children. I told Nathan that John would benefit from attending a special support class in elementary school. However, both Nathan and Andrew were opposed to the idea. John may be a little crazy, but he doesn't need to be in a special support class. Those classes are for kids with disabilities, correct? I don't think it's too bad. Traumatic brain injury is not readily apparent. Nathan and Andrew, who had spent little time with John, did not appear to understand the gravity of the situation. I repeatedly explained that John's outburst bothered others, and more importantly, caused him distress. However, they refused to accept it. It appeared that they were ignoring the fact that their beloved John Nathan's son was disabled. As John grew, his violence worsened, and bruises appeared on my arms and thighs. Nathan and Andrew pretended they didn't notice. I attempted to seek assistance from the authorities to improve the situation, but when I approached them, they advised me to have the father visit the office. Nathan demonstrated no understanding of John's disability and may not even be familiar with the term traumatic brain injury. The school called almost every day, and I apologized to several people. Days went by without anyone to rely on. John was constantly irritable, pulling my hair and continuing his violence. I was so tired that I didn't want to seek help from anyone. When John was in 4th grade, he severely injured a younger student at school. I learned the details from his homeroom teacher. Apparently, while a younger boy was climbing the stairs, John pushed him. Other students witnessed the incident, and it was clear that John was to blame. Even when asked why, John was unable to explain. Leaving his teacher perplexed, I dashed to apologize to the injured boy's family. As soon as I saw the parents' faces at the door, I apologized profusely. The boy had broken a bone near the entrance. The boy's parents yelled at me, "Why?" Neither John nor his parents had arrived. The boy, who was wearing a cast, accused me tearfully, saying it hurt so much and he was scared. I apologized over and over. When the boy's father made a parting remark to me, asking why a child like John was in a regular class, my chest tightened and I struggled to breathe. Back at home, I cooked in the kitchen, making John's favorite soup. I cut the carrots into small pieces to make them easier for him to eat. John ate the soup while clumsily holding the spoon. I picked up the spoon that had fallen from his hand several times before he threw it at me in anger, with a feeling that was neither angry nor sad. I handed him a new spoon and quietly observed his expression. I was curious what kind of adult he would become. He did not appear to reflect on his actions, even after injuring someone. He acted on his emotions and was unable to control his anger. At this rate, John may do something truly irreversible. That night, in the quiet bedroom with only the sound of the air purifier to hear, I looked down at John. I could hear his soft breathing. Watching John sleep with a peaceful and innocent expression, my heart froze at the coldness of the knife in my right hand, staring at the sharp edge. My mind raced with the desire to relieve John's suffering, and I clenched my teeth. I gripped my wrist and held the knife tightly in my other hand. Mixed emotions of affection, hatred, and sadness overwhelmed me, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I closed my eyes, trying desperately to control my trembling body and erratic breathing. I apologize, I cannot take it any longer. I raised the knife above John using both hands. This is the only way. I apologize, I apologize. Hello, what are you doing, Elena? Andrew entered the room unexpectedly and was taken aback when he saw the knife in my hand. I stopped moving and turned to face Andrew. He stood at the door, staring at me with fear. My hands trembled, and doubt filled my heart. It took only a few seconds. I believe Nathan, who appeared behind Andrew, rushed past me with a fierce expression and threw himself over John. If I lowered the knife now, I'd stab Nathan. Nathan looked at me with a terrified expression. "Mom, please stop. I am begging you." John, who had woken up by then, looked at me with surprise. He didn't say anything because he didn't understand what was going on. Nathan stared at me silently through the gap in his body. I wondered how I looked in John's eyes at that time. I see John with unusually clear eyes. I slowly regained consciousness and placed the knife on the floor. I left the room without saying anything. My body felt extremely heavy. Oh, why is my body feeling so heavy? I called the cops from my smartphone in the living room. My heart was crushed with despair and regret. I wanted someone to punish me for what I had attempted to do, for the horrible thing I had nearly done. I was afraid that if no one intervened, I would repeat the mistake. A police officer questioned me about what had happened. I couldn't say anything and simply watched the hands of the clock on the wall. Elena hung up the telephone. Andrew stated, following me with a pained expression. I lost my strength. I moved the phone away from my ear and began to cry. It quote S fine, Elena. Nothing occurred. That is fine, Andrew said. Large tears streamed from my eyes and landed at my feet. I gathered my strength while staring at the tears on the floor. I put the phone back to my ear. I attempted to hurt my grandson. I apologize. I looked up. Andrew, standing in front of me, appeared to be about to cry. If you're going to make that face, you should have realized sooner, I said. Andrew came over and hugged me tightly. It isn't too late. Call the cops and admit you made a mistake, Andrew whispered painfully into my ear. I pushed away from Andrew's chest and attempted to smile. I didn't need a mirror to realize that my smile must have been terrible. No, if you and Nathan hadn't come at that time, I would have. A few minutes later, several police officers arrived at the house, and I was arrested and taken to a patrol car. I closed my eyes and reflected deeply on my crime. I remember John's eyes staring at me, so innocent. Tears started to fall from the corners of my closed eyes. At the police station, a young female officer inquired about the situation. The questioning lasted several days, and I answered in as much detail as I could. Feeling the consequences of my crime, I even wanted to be put in prison. The officer listened to my story with a sympathetic face. It's okay, she said gently. Take your time. As I struggled to speak, an attorney who I had not even requested appeared and listened to my story with genuine concern. It's okay. I can remain in prison for the rest of my life, I said. The attorney smiled at me with a slightly troubled expression. Remember that there are people running around trying to defend you. The attorney informed me that my feelings when I attempted to harm John were not a temporary lapse. If I returned to live with John, I might eventually. After 3 days in the detention center, I was allowed to return home. Samantha was waiting in the police station's parking lot. I was surprised that Samantha, rather than Andrew or Nathan, came to pick me up, but I was grateful. Samantha's return surprised me because she had been living overseas. But as soon as she noticed me, she ran over and hugged me. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over and hugged me. Mom, it must have been difficult. Samantha assured me that everything was fine now. Samantha, how about your job? I asked. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter, she said. Samantha's warmth was so comforting that I was at a loss for words, as emotions welled up within me without being expressed. Samantha put me in the passenger seat and drove away without mentioning our destination. After a while of driving, a massive lake that resembled the sea became visible. The lake's clear blue surface reflected the surrounding mountains, creating a mystical atmosphere. Many flowers were planted along the road, and rows of trees stretched indefinitely. That night, I asked Dad and Nathan to check on you, Samantha said. What? I responded. Samantha adjusted her sunglasses while holding the steering wheel in one hand. The sun's reflection in the lake was so bright that I stopped looking ahead and instead focused on Samantha's profile. I had been speaking with Samantha almost every day. I had also spoken with her that night, but I couldn't remember what we talked about. But I probably vented about my current situation. Living with John had reached its limit. John had grown so much that I could no longer manage him on my own. If he continues to develop, he may become an irreparable person. So I thought it would be best if I confided in Samantha, who was living abroad and couldn't do anything. That day, you didn't seem like yourself. You appeared cornered and desperate. Samantha stated that night, after John entered a classmate at school, I realized how much trouble he was causing everyone. The injured boy's sad eyes and his parents' resentful looks made me feel as if I was to blame for not properly raising John. It is my fault Clara is no longer present. I have to be John's mom. I said, Mom. Samantha said firmly, eyes fixed on the road, You're not John's mother. The car eventually slowed at a red light, and Samantha gently placed her hand on my lap. Mom, you are not John's parents. You don't have to push yourself as hard, she said. But I'm not sure what to do, I replied. I'm sorry, Mother, but I wish you had relied on me more, Samantha said. Even with her sunglasses on, I could see she was crying. I could not rely on you. I simply couldn't, I said, but I was overjoyed that Samantha, who was supposed to be working abroad, had dropped everything to come to me. I said thank you in a choked voice. I didn't care where the car was going. My heart was so full that I fell asleep and gently closed my eyes. Later, I discovered that neither Andrew nor Nathan were aware that I was taking care of John alone. During the police interrogation, Andrew stated, "I thought Nathan was helping," while Nathan stated, "I thought Dad was with him." Both Andrew and Nathan were avoiding confronting John and leaving it to each other. Samantha was curious following the incident. I moved into an apartment that Samantha arranged for me. A few months after the incident, I saw Andrew and Nathan for the first time in a while. They apologized with tears in their eyes. Andrew apologized, "Elena, for leaving John alone with you." Nathan added, "I am also sorry. I was so preoccupied with losing Claire that I neglected my responsibilities as a father." There were more, true, but there was another reason for their disappointment. The incident had turned into a local news story. Neighbors were interviewed on television, and our home became the center of attention for a while. Given John's circumstances, the school strongly recommended that he be transferred to a special support class. Although Andrew and Nathan had previously opposed the idea, they were persuaded by many school officials, and John was assigned to a different class. Don was initially upset about being treated differently, but he has since adjusted and is living more peacefully. Andrew and Nathan were sternly warned by their employers to prioritize their families, and they were nearly forced to leave work on time. John wasn't present at our meeting. When I asked about him, Nathan smiled lightly and said that Claire's parents had moved nearby and are now caring for him. Andrew added that it has been extremely difficult for Nathan and me to care for John. He gets angry and hits us hard. His parents have been a huge help. They were sincerely grateful to Claire's parents. I couldn't help but think that if they had recognized this sooner and assisted me, things might have been different. As I was thinking about this, Andrew and Nathan both apologized. Nathan said, "I sincerely apologize." Andrew continued, "If you ever feel ready, we can try living together again." I could not bear to hear the rest of his words. I still do not have the courage to confront John. When I think of that night. My hands tremble. The calm, sleeping face and the cold knife, and those innocent eyes peering through Nathan's arms as he attempted to shield John. John might not understand what I was trying to do that night. For a while, nobody spoke. Silence filled the room. Samantha gently placed her hand on my shoulder and stroked it lightly. She explained that Dad and Nathan have not forgotten all that she has done for the family. "Mom, please take your time and rest now." "Samantha," I responded. Samantha continued, "Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is that you learn and grow from them, right?" Samantha encouraged me. Andrew and Nathan nodded in agreement. Perhaps if I had been more open about my issues with the family from the start, things would have turned out differently. From now on, we must speak openly about John, me and everyone else, Samantha reassured me. "It's okay, Mom. You can do it." Her smile was so bright I couldn't help but smile back. Given my circumstances and John's feelings, my sentence was suspended. I occasionally make homemade dishes. Fried chicken, which Samantha and Nathan enjoyed as children, is one of them. The fried chicken I placed in a container reaches John via Samantha, and he happily devours it. John says that if I try harder, I'll be able to see Grandma again, right now. John is undergoing proper rehabilitation under the supervision of specialists in order to live comfortably despite his physical limitations. He may not be able to do monkey bars or climb stairs as quickly as other children, but he is making progress. Tomorrow will undoubtedly be a better day than today. Life is a struggle against adversity. Everyone faces challenges and hardships. It is possible to gain understanding and cooperation from those around you. No matter how much you want to run away, there will always be someone who believes in you. Having someone by your side to share your struggles can be a huge help.